Form W-4. What is that? Hey taxpayers, it's Tiffany Gonzalez CPA here, founder and CEO of Accounting to Scale. And today we're back with another installment of What is that? Where we discuss financial term and topics you may have heard, but we make them super easy to understand. We know the IRS loves forms, and on average, it's your CPA's responsibilities to be worried about these forms. However, this is one form that you are going to want to worry about. So let's talk about it. The Form W-4. What is that? The W-4 form, also known as the Employee Withholding Certificate, tells the employer exactly how much money to withhold from your paycheck for federal income tax every time they pay you. These amounts that your employer withholds from you, they remit to the IRS on your behalf, and they count towards payment of your federal tax liability in advance. Filling out this form wrong can have its implications. If you fill out the form in a way where your employer withholds too much, then you will get an enormous refund when you could have used that money throughout the year effectively. If you fill out the form in a way in which your employer doesn't hold enough, you may end up with a tax bill. This is why it's so important that you fill out your Form W-4 correctly. In fact, the employer gives you the responsibility of filling this form correctly in order for them to withhold the proper tax. Now, it's important to note that you don't need to fill out a W-4 form every year. If you've been with your employer for some time, there's no reason to change your W-4 form unless you've had a life-changing event. Maybe something like getting married or having children or taking on another job. However, you can always count on having to fill out one of these forms when you start a new job. Now, it doesn't take a rocket science to fill out this form, but as with any IRS form, they can get pretty tricky. So I'll go ahead and walk you through how to fill out this form. The first part is really just your basic demographic personal information: name, address, social. In the next section, you'll want to check mark your anticipated filing status. This is whether you will be filing single, married filing jointly, married filing separately, or head of household. It's important to note that you must designate now whether you will be filing jointly or separately from your spouse. You see, if you check mark married filing jointly and later decide to file separately from your spouse, you may likely owe income tax because the withholding in your paycheck each time you were paid was not sufficient. The next section asks about your job and your spouse's job and whether you have a second job. This area can get quite confusing, and what I tell most taxpayers is to leave it blank if you have any doubts. By leaving it blank, you will ensure that your employer withholds enough taxes on this pay in order for you to have a result favorable to you. Also, sometimes for privacy reasons, taxpayers may not want to disclose other jobs that they have or how much their spouse is currently making. The next section has to do with dependents. This is where the child tax credit and the dependent credit play in. The more dependents you list on your Form W-4, the less your employer will withhold from you. And so as a result, when you file your tax return, it's super important that whatever dependents you stated on your Form W-4 or counted on your Form W-4, that you also include them in your tax return. For example, if on your Form W-4, you say that you will be claiming 2 children, then when you file your tax return, you need to claim both children. Otherwise, if you claim less dependents, you will likely owe tax on your federal filing form. And that's because your employer did not withhold enough taxes, knowing that you actually only had 1 dependent instead of 2. Make sure you sign your name at the bottom and date the form, and then turn it in to your employer. There is an additional section at the bottom to list any other income from other sources. And again, this is really your choice. The more income you list there, the more your withholding will be on each paycheck. Additionally, you're disclosing something to your employer that you may want to keep private. In the end, if you take the most conservative approach, which is just selecting your filing status at the top and leaving the rest blank, you will likely have enough federal withholding in each check in order to meet your tax liability at the end of the year. But again, this is why it's so important that you speak to a CPA, because everybody's situation is a bit different. So if you have any doubts while filling out a Form W-4, don't hesitate to reach out to your favorite CPA. To keep up to date with all the information we're putting out, hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at Accounting to Scale. Until the next video, your favorite CPA Tiffany Gonzalez.